Good evening, everyone. My name is Ramona La Roche, and I'm talking to you live from the African American Research Library and Cultural Center in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in the historic Sistrunk area. Tonight, I'm really excited about a program that we're doing, and it's based on the American Library Association's theme, Oceans of Possibilities. In thinking about programming for our summer reading program with this theme, after talking to a couple of people about divers and particularly Black divers, I said, let me reach out and see if I could connect with some of these people that I've been reading about and hearing about. So I'm really excited and I'm really happy to bring tonight some of our local African, Caribbean American divers here in the Florida area, as well as some other parts of the country. I'm going to bring on one of the lead persons from an organization known as Diving with a Purpose. And Mr. Kenneth Stewart, he'll be able to tell you a little bit more about the history of the organization, what he does, and what the purpose of the mission is for this group. We also have with us tonight Mr. Kramer Wimberly, also a longtime diver. And we also have Miss Denise Lane. Let me start by telling you a bit about first Mr. Kenneth Stewart. Ken Stewart is a native New Yorker. He was educated in the public school system. He was drafted into the Army and served one term or tour, excuse me, in Vietnam. He is now settled in Nashville, Tennessee, where he continues to pursue adventure to balance the rest of his life, his work life, the rest of his life. The adventure in scuba was to be enjoyed with his close friends, forming an organization of African American divers that would meet, travel, and support a youth program to expose those that were least likely to have these kinds of experiences. He co-founded the Tennessee Aquatic Project and Development Group, Incorporated, TAP, with the assistance of Willie White. Since 1994, this group has influenced the lives of some 200 young people. Of those that were in the program for more than a year and became certified open water scuba divers, all have attended college. Ken also serves as a program director, a scheduler, a mentor, and a spokesman for the Diving with a Purpose and Youth Diving with a Purpose. He's responsible for planting seeds for the National Association of Black Scuba Divers Youth Educational Summit. Some of his accomplishments since 2005, over 300 people have participated in his programs, including 125 maritime archaeology advocates, including 50 young people. He's documented 16 shipwrecks, including 18th and 19th century sailing vessels, World War II aircraft, accumulated over 15,000 volunteer hours in the Biscayne National Park and National Marine Sanctuaries, and has conducted 4 Guerrero slave ship expeditions. I bring you Mr. Ken Stewart. Thank you for joining us, Mr.
Yes.
Stewart.
Well, thank you for having me. Oh, I'm sorry. So am I supposed to elaborate on this, Rachel? Um,
Yeah, this is your time.
okay, so a lot of those numbers that you just alluded to, those are not my numbers individually. Those like the 15,000 hours. That is not the hours that I've done by myself. It's all been done collectively.
Okay.
So yeah, so I don't want people to think I've got 15,000 hours volunteer hours. That's a lot of hours. But
Okay.
right. But my name is Ken Stewart. I am the co-founder and program director of, as you alluded to, Tennessee Aquatic Project and Development Group, which is here locally here in Nashville, Tennessee. And which I'm going to introduce a young lady in a few minutes, who is Rachel Stewart, no relation, but she's a product of the Tennessee Aquatic Project, better known as TAP, and she'll allude to that herself. And then I co-founded 16 years ago. So the Tennessee Aquatic Project is about 27 years old, in our 27th year of service to the national community. And then in 2003, 2002, I co-founded Diving with a Purpose. Then in 2011, I co-founded Youth Diving with a Purpose. Um, so Diving with a Purpose it's very simple. We teach the lay scuba divers, um, in which most of them are, the only professional that's on that I know, the only professional that's on this broadcast is Kramer. Kramer's a professional. I'm not a professional. I'm just a lay scuba diver. We teach the lay scuba diver how to identify and map underwater shipwrecks, right, with an emphasis on the African diaspora, right. And if you're not familiar with the African diaspora, it was the 400-year journey through the Middle Passage, where captive Africans were brought to the Americas. And we know there were at least 10,000 ships that participated in that voyage. And we know we know a lot of them sunk, right? And DWP, what we want to do is be actually involved in the documentation of any slave ship that was found, but there have not been a lot found. We have to be very honest with you. Uh, there's only been 6 to 8 found, and most of them have already been documented. Uh, but there are still we're still looking for them. But what we do is teach the basics of maritime archaeology, and when you finish our course, which is a 1 week course, you become an archaeology advocate. You're not an archaeologist. You have to be you have to go to 4 year school to be an archaeologist. But what 90% of the people in DWP are African American, and what brings us all together, A, is our love of diving, and B, our love of history. So that's kind of DWP in a nutshell. I mean, there's a lot more to it. Actually, we just finished a mission last week down in Florida. And so what we have a 1 week mission for the adults and a 1 week mission for the youth. Same program, same identical program. We will be in Florida um, at the end of July with the youth. So that's kind of in a nutshell. And of course, there's a conservation program that we have, and then Kramer will talk about that. That's his baby. And so all of that is a part of the DWP.
Okay. Thank you, Ken. So I know I've asked people if they would put their questions or comments in the chat, and we will address them, at the end after all the speakers share. I would like you now to, if you would share some information about Rachel.
Well, okay, so Rachel Stewart is who is no kin to me, but I've been mentoring her since she was 14. So as a lady, I'm not going to tell her age. I'm going to let her tell you her age. But she is a dynamic young lady, and I, she's been in, she came through the Tennessee Aquatic Project when she was 14. All right, and I used to tell her, and she'll tell part of her story about why. But when she loves the water, and when she would come to the meetings and I would talk about scuba diving, her eyes would light up. And I said to myself, this is going to be a young lady who's going to take advantage of everything TAP has to offer. So she was in our program for 4 years, or maybe 5 years, and then she became what we call a master master scuba diver, wilderness survival training, everything that we had in TAP to offer. Um, um, Rachel took advantage of, and of course she went off to college. But I will let her talk about her experiences after that. But it's been a dynamic. It's been a pleasure to know Rachel all these years and what she's accomplished, and she'll tell you about what's next for her.
Thank you, Rachel. Let me see. We can unmute you. My unmute. Okay, there it is. Okay. Go ahead, Rachel.
Yes, hi. Sorry, it's a little
Hi.
noisy where I am. So I stay on mute just so there's
Oh,
not too
okay.
much background
Okay.
noise. But yes, hi. I'm glad to be here. My name is Rachel again. Um, I am, as Mr. Stewart has mentioned, a master scuba diver with Patty and I've participated in four YDWP missions and two DWP missions. And I participated this one last year, or this year, a few weeks ago. And currently, I am a PhD student at the University of Wisconsin, Madison, studying environmental engineering.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, not sure if I should give any more of an introduction, but
Well, it's an introduction, but also, what particular area of diving are you interested in? You know, when he mentioned archaeology, he mentioned conservation. Is there a particular focus that you're dealing with?
um, I'm mostly a recreational diver, so most of my diving is sort of just recreational. And when I'm able to participate in the programs, I participate. I will say that I like both the archaeology diving and the coral restoration diving. I feel like my mind is a bit more biology focused, so I do really, really like the coral restoration diving, although I haven't been able to do Kramer's program just yet. So um,
Okay.
I just really like to get in the water. I love to dive whenever I'm able to. And this is a great way just to do something other than just swim around and look at fish.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us. And next, let me tell you a little bit about Mr. Kramer Wimberly. So, Kramer is a master scuba diver trainer, an archaeology diver, and a coral reef conservationist. For more than a decade, he's been a lead dive instructor and a board member of Diving with a Purpose. This leading international organization provides extraordinary wreck site documentation, project support services for submerged heritage preservation and conservation projects, and training programs. I'm kind of going down a little bit. It looks like he's a certified survey diver. He recently featured alongside executive producer Samuel L. Jackson Jr. in the 2020 six-part documentary Enslaved. Known as a beloved mentor, he has devoted the past 8 years as a volunteer to the DWP Youth Diving with a Purpose program. He spent 35 years of his life underwater. He started his career as a wreck diver and traveled to over 35 countries while developing his skills as a diver. With over 4,000 dives completed, he shows absolutely no sign of slowing down, earning, earning additional scientific diver and REVO rebreather certifications. Through all of his extensive diving knowledge, Kramer has discovered that his true passion is teaching people to join him in his element and help them overcome their fears. Quote, my real passion is teaching people to join me in my element. I get a thrill from seeing the fear erased from a person's face and seeing them discover the freedom of diving. He believes that you're never too old to learn something new. Diving offers everyone something. All it takes is one giant stride. Don't worry, I'll teach you. Welcome, Kramer.
Thank you, Dr. Roche. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Sure.
Um, Ken spoke about um, the beginnings of and what's currently going on with DWP and Rachel. Hello, Rachel. Spoke of, I guess, from her perspective about why DWP and how it is that she came to program. Right? So I'm going to leave, hopefully, answers related to DWP archaeology to them, right? Since today and for the past couple of years, the majority of my focus has been with DWP and their and our preserving our oceans program. Right? A couple of years ago, uh, both Ken and I started the choral program together. Right? I just kind of took off a bit. Right? because we started working with the Coral Restoration Foundation, which is a wonderful organization based out of Key Largo. They do a lot of work uh, in attempting to rehabilitate the reefs, our coral reefs, by growing coral in a nursery and then outplanting it back out onto the reef. All of the majority of the work in coral restoration came about as a result of a die-off of long spine urchins that occurred in and around the Florida Reef Tract back in 1982, 1983. When that occurred, when that die-off happened, right, it wasn't really until then that people realized that the long spine urchin that died was actually an anchor species associated with our coral reef ecosystem. An anchor species is responsible for holding up, it's a large part of the coral ecosystem. The loss of that species had a devastating effect on our coral reefs because that species was responsible for grazing the reef and eating algae, keeping algae at bay. Right? And the absence of that species caused algae to proliferate. Algae proliferation caused a transition for our coral ecosystem. So it's moving from a hard coral ecosystem that is dominated by hard corals to a soft coral ecosystem. Hard corals are responsible for protecting our coastlines and our shorelines from the energy of from the energy associated with storms and storm surge. Right? Um, our hard coral reefs are responsible at acting as coral nurseries to protect fish and invertebrates and give them places to live and grow and survive. Our hard coral ecosystem is responsible for almost 7,000 species of fishes and invertebrates and anchor substrate species, or your hard corals, your sponges, right, that maintain that ecosystem. Everything related to that was thrown off balance as a result of the loss of that one anchor species. And we have been attempting to correct for that for 40 years now. DWP, as a volunteer organization of scuba divers engaging in citizen science, we are teaching recreational divers how to document the effects of the coral reef, right, and document the health of our coral reefs. So we have placed ourselves into the position of creating an organization that we call DWP Cares. Cares being a collective approach to restoring our ecosystem. Uh, what what we do is we train recreational divers to identify, right, and document particular species that are responsible for the health of a coral reef. Those fish that are responsible for the health of the coral reef, we go down and identify and document. Those invertebrates that are responsible for the health of a coral reef, we go down and document. Those corals and sponges that are responsible for the health of a coral reef, we document. Then we take that information that we've documented to determine the health or the absence or the lack of health of the coral reef, and we upload that into an international database that scientists and legislators can use to affect change on how it is that we engage with the coral reef. That has been and will continue to be my passion for the past couple of years and going forward, because every living human being on the planet has a relationship with the ocean, a connection to the ocean. The ocean is responsible for over 70% of the oxygen production on the planet.
Mm.
Most people think it's trees, and trees do their part, right? About 25%. 75% of oxygen production happens in the ocean. So we're all connected to the ocean. because we all breathe air and oxygen. Right? So part of the other part of what we do, part of it is in documenting the health of the coral reef, and the other part, the most important part, is educating the community, right? Everyone about what our connection is to the ocean and why it is that it's important that we save our coral reefs, because absent them, we don't have an opportunity to survive.
Mhm.
Right? I'm gonna
Okay.
I'm gonna stop there. Right,
Okay.
I could
All
go on.
right.
Right,
Thank you.
and we can engage in meaningful
Okay.
dialogue. Hopefully,
Okay. So I also wanted to invite a very dear friend of mine, Denise Lane. And I invited her because Denise is a fairly new diver, particularly in relationship to our other guest tonight. But I felt like she needed to be a part of this conversation because of her love of the ocean and her, getting into, getting certification and so forth. So I have to put a plug in. Denise and I met through a group called Outdoor Afro. And we actually met at an excursion to Peanut Island, which is in Riviera Beach. You have to take a ferry to get over there. And there was about 18 of us that day, and we had such a ball back in January, and we have been like hands in a glove ever since. So thank you, Denise. I want to thank you for that friendship.
Thank you.
So let me tell you a little bit about Denise. Denise has founded an organization known as Sisters in Spirit of South Florida, or SIS. Their mission is to empower women to grow and live the life they want through spirituality, sisterhood, and service to others. It's a faith-based group of women who are guided by the word of God to share love, talents, gifts, and faith to uplift the lives of others. It's a foundation to foster love, support, and unity among women. They are also committed to community service and dedicating time to mentoring foster children, the homeless, young mothers, and those who are in need. Denise achieved her Bachelor of Arts degree from Howard University and her Juris Doctor degree from Georgetown University Law Center. She is currently a federal immigration judge in Miami, Florida. She's a compassionate volunteer serving the homeless and hungry and those with economic needs, and she loves mentoring. She also actively volunteers with Joshua's Heart Foundation, the Miami Rescue Mission, Dove Light Ministry, the Center for Family and Child Enrichment, and Place of Hope. Personally, she enjoys traveling, scuba diving, and other outdoor activities. Denise, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit about you and your love of this new sport of diving and how you got into it, some things like that.
Okay, well, a little bit of background. I was raised in Jamaica, so I was surrounded by water as a child. And I also was a competitive swimmer with the Flying Fish Ambassadors in Jamaica. And then at Howard University, I always also was a competitive swimmer on the Howard swim team. So I've always had a love for water. And then I went on, had my career, family, etc. And then I've always wanted to be a scuba diver. I just had that fear of not getting through the course, the PADI course, all the requirements, which is the online course, and then the actual training to get your certification for the initial open water certification. And then the pandemic hit, and for most of us, there were a lot of different thinking in the pandemic. And then I said, why not? And I went to Divers Cove, which is in Davie, and I walked in. I just signed up for a class, and it was one of the best things I could have done. For scuba diving, I went into it recreationally just to enjoy the sport. And I have since learned that there is an ocean of possibilities beyond just being a recreational diver. Besides the camaraderie among the other divers, like I found out about diving with a purpose, there are a lot of things that you can do with your scuba diving skills. So hopefully, right now I'm certified as open water, but I'm hoping to get my increased certifications, and hopefully one day it could be an instructor or a master. But also I'm very interested in the restoration of the ocean. Since I've been scuba diving, I actually look at the ocean differently. And even when I go to enjoy the beach with family, I'm very, very careful with trash and certain plastics. And just even if sometimes if I find trash in the ocean itself, I take it out. So I have a totally different appreciation of the ocean since I've been scuba diving. Although I'm fairly new, I just I'm in a different world when I'm scuba diving. I can't really explain it. It's just one of those natural highs, and just to be able to be under the water and just feeling weightless and floating, and there's so many things that you can see and enjoy and learn as well. I'm beginning to learn about the different fish. I know we talked about the different coral. I hope to dive on wrecks, but it's just one for scuba diving has allowed me to appreciate what the earth has to offer, and also for me to understand what I want to be involved with is with the scuba diving. I'm really interested in the restoration and cleaning up of different areas, and I know I have to get more diving hours, but I'm working towards being more active as a scuba diver than just being recreational as the organization Diving with a Purpose. I hope to take it to a different level where I can be of some value and be productive and help save the ocean. I also have become interested, like through this program, in educating others about scuba diving. I know a lot of my friends have told me that they can't swim. That's why they can't do scuba diving. And I'm like, well, first learn to swim and then we can go scuba diving. So I just think it's tremendously important to educate our community about not only learning to swim, but what is out there in the ocean and how they can impact the ocean, and just simple things that they even do at home as to, what we do at home in our regular life or at work or when we're out just living our lives, and how that impacts the ocean. For me, I have particularly paid attention since I became a scuba diver to the moon and how the moon impacts the ocean and the waves and the high tide and the low tide, and just little simple things I never thought about. I'm really, really interested in. So scuba diving has just, again, opened up the ocean of possibilities for me, and I'm totally excited to continue on this journey and also to get to know other divers. I also hope to do trips outside of the local area of South Florida, where I can do some dives to see the beauty of the different areas where there is to dive in the world.
Unmute myself. Okay, thank you, Denise, so much for your comments. So we're going to open up now to comments, questions, discussion among our guests. And also, I want to remind our audience, if you have questions or comments, to please put them in the chat and we can view them. One that I see is, how are slave ships traced? That question came up.
Well, they're not actually traced. Some of them are found accidentally. Um, you have to remember that the African diaspora is 400 years old, and the last slave ship, which is, if you did not know, is called the Catilda,
Right,
and it's in uh, Mobile, Alabama, and it reached the shores in the 1800s. I don't remember the date. So it's very difficult to document where they are. We know the voyage that they took, right?
right.
But we don't
Transatlantic.
we don't know where they are. So some of them are stumbled on accidentally. Most of them are stumbled on accidentally. You know, unfortunately, not unfortunately, uh, slave ships don't have the value to treasure hunters, so they don't go looking for them, right? You know, for us in our community, yes, they are very valuable, right?
Mhm.
But it takes a tremendous amount of money to 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 embark on any kind of search. So what'll happen is people will stumble on them accidentally, and that's where we can come in. Depending on where the wreck is, you know, people can hire DWP and we can thoroughly document the wreck. Depending on a lot depends on where it is. If it's very deep, we can't do anything with it. We're not really trained deep divers, but most of the wrecks that we've been involved in is actually in 30 feet of water or less.
Okay.
And one ship that we're really looking for is in South Florida, and it's the reason why DWP exists. It's called the Guerrero. The Guerrero was sunk in somewhere in Biscayne National Park in 1827. There was 561 captive Africans on board. 41 of them died the night that it ran aground, and then the rest of the Africans, the captive Africans, were either enslaved, or they went to Cuba and enslaved, or the rest of them went back to Liberia. So we know everything about that ship. The British kept good records. A young
Mhm.
lady named Gail Swanson did some tremendous research on the Guerrero. And she even traced some of the descendants back to Liberia. But we are still looking for that ship. We're hoping that we think we're closing in on it. We're going this summer in July to conduct another mission up in Biscayne National Park to narrow down where it may be. But that is one of the main ones. So there are others. There's a Henrietta Marie, which is also in Florida, off the coast of Key West. And there's one in DWP has been involved with in South Africa called the San Jose, which is off of Cape Town. So there are others that have been found, but it's not that many. And like I said, to answer your question, you you have to kind of stumble on them.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And sometimes a principal investigator will have a research question that's based more often than not how it is that we end up being engaged. If it's not for private profit, some archaeologists may have a question or they may be doing research attempting to locate a particular ship. Right? And if they're attempting to locate, they have a general area because they've been through the archives documenting, trying to figure out where it may lay. And then with that general question, if they've narrowed it down to an area that they believe the ship may lay, uh, we may engage at that point because someone, a principal investigator, has said, I think this is the ship of XYZ. Right? And then we'll go down and document it to try and confirm whether or not it is.
Okay. Thank you.
But to add to that, Rachel can add to that because just last week she was down there in South Florida, working on a shipwreck. Right, Rachel, can you allude to that?
This particular ship was not believed, at least when it wrecked, to be a slave ship. It wrecked in the 1950s. It was a barge ship that was carrying bricks headed for Key West. It was a father and son on the barge. Bad weather came in. The ship wrecked, and the son ended up swimming to shore to get help. The father was also rescued, but they did lose the bricks. But eventually, they came back and salvaged as many bricks as possible. I mean, within the same time frame as well. But to this day, when we were out there, we still could see bricks were there. So we think that they took up part of the ship that had bricks and brought that down to Key West.
Do we know where the bricks came from, where they originated?
They do. I don't want to say the wrong thing. So
Okay.
I'm there. They did tell us where those bricks did originate, but I do not recall where they were from.
Okay. I asked you because of some of the research I've done around brick making in the Charleston, South Carolina area and Columbia, South Carolina. So I just wondered, which might have been coastal connection.
Yeah, I know that it was in the U.S. somewhere. They originated in the U.S. I'm not sure from exactly.
Right. Okay. Okay. Other questions or comments?
Well, bricks did play a big part in the Danish slave ships that were found off the coast of Costa Rica. Right? Uh, um, and that part of that happened as a result of a relationship that Ken developed with the Ambassadors of the Sea in Costa Rica, a community-based group attempting to tie themselves to their history because they had dark-skinned um, Costa Ricans in their community, and they were trying, and they'd always heard stories about some Africans who came off of a ship, right? So that went back for generations, and so these young people in Costa Rica were attempting to trace their lineage back. And up until I think it was just this last year, they determined that the two ships that wrecked in their harbor were actually Danish slave ships.
Okay.
And they were able to tie these ships to Denmark as a result of the bricks that were on the ship, or yellow bricks that were only made or processed um, in a quarry in Denmark at a particular time.
Okay. Okay. I want to go back to the coral piece. I believe that a lot of people don't know the value of the significance that coral plays in our lives, and I'm really happy that you shared, Kramer, with us, the importance of it. And I think also when you look at structures in other places like in the Caribbean, where there are a lot of buildings that were built out of, coral limestone,
Limestone.
and they, like Barbados, for example. I mean, those buildings have been around since the 1600s and still standing pretty strong. And I just think that, how do you face the challenge of educating people? I mean, um, are you involved with schools and education? Um, you know, do people really think about it? And how do you get people to more engage around the importance of the coral reef?
Actually, in venues like this, right, our work is in community outreach and explaining to people, one, what their connection is, and two, what the importance is. Uh, uh, because we don't think in those terms, especially if you're nowhere near the water. Right? I'm going to get back to answering your question and hold me to that. But before I forget, um, Miss Lane, right? Um,
Yes.
Jamaica just over the course of the last 2 or 3 years instituted 16 or 17 new marine park areas around the island of Jamaica, right? Uh, which speaks to their recognition of the importance of attempting to save our coral ecosystem. All of those areas need to be documented so that you can assess the health of that area and bring what was and is a declining coral ecosystem back into balance. And it can be done through education, and enlisting a number of different communities on island in the effort, right? And that's where you having a connection to Jamaica and a connection to scuba diving and a desire to want to do something positive, it can be done, right? So we're always attempting to reach out and communicate, right? Um, what exists but below the ocean, right, or below the surface of the ocean, right, to educate people, getting into educational systems, getting into the schools, right, to teach the both youth and adults about the importance of the coral ecosystem is intrinsically necessary, right? So that is also some place where there's a huge gap that needs to be closed in order to resolve, right? limestone, right, is what's produced by coral. Right? Coral polyps. Right? A coral is an animal, right? That has an algae, a plant that lives within it. So there's a symbiotic relationship in each one of the coral polyps and the algae that lives within it. The algae that lives within the coral provides it with 90% of its food source. Right? The coral provides the algae with a home, a safe place. Right? The, as as the coral and the algae both feed and eat, right? One of the waste product that the coral produces is the limestone,
Hmm.
right? So as the coral
That's interesting.
as the coral feeds the algae and the algae feeds the coral, limestone gets produced and the mound continues, that building block continues to grow as a waste product. What what we are doing to the ocean, right, with global warming, um, is heating the ocean, right, and force, forcing the ocean to absorb more carbon dioxide than it normally would. The ocean feeds off of carbon dioxide, right? It always has, right? It eats it. The ocean eats and produces oxygen as a result. But because we're pumping massive amounts of greenhouse gases and carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, right? It is overwhelming the ocean, right? And that overwhelming of the ocean is where you get ocean acidification from. The ocean is absorbing too much carbon dioxide. The ocean is absorbing too much heat, right? So we're warming the ocean and we're causing the ocean to become more acidic, which is destabilizing that calcium carbonate structure also. Right? Um, Additionally, throwing the balance, that delicately balanced ecosystem, out of balance. So we're pumping too much CO2 into the atmosphere, causing the ocean to become more acidic. Right? That greenhouse gas is also heating the ocean, causing it to be more warm. The warming effect is bleaching the coral, killing it. The ocean acidification is destroying, right, the bonds of that lime. So limestone isn't being made or produced the same way as a result of acidification. Acidification is also causing a deterioration or a changing in the the shells of all of your mollusks that are also made of calcium carbonate. So your lobsters, your crabs, your mussels, right, are all suffering as a result of ocean acidification. I'm
Whew.
going.
I want to come back to the Denise talked about people are interested in diving, but they're afraid because they don't swim. And we know for a fact in many coastal cities and areas that many of our children do not swim, even though they live in close proximity to the oceans and rivers and so forth. And is there a relationship between your organizations and swim programs, like local swim programs? Do you do outreach specifically to swim programs? And like, what is your outreach? How do you get young people involved? And I think I want to direct this question to Rachel, particularly because she kind of represents the youth aspect, of this team. Rachel, how did you get involved, and what do you do to pass the torch to now, younger people?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've always loved the water. I don't think I ever had a fear of it. I think kids maybe start out that way, like they don't have a fear, and that's something instilled in them, or because their lack of experience with water may over time grow into fear.
Mhm.
So actually, one thing that's pretty interesting I love to tell people is that my mom grew up afraid of water, terrified of water, would never get in water over her head. Um, and yeah, so growing up, anytime we would go swimming or anything, she wasn't involved. But after I got joined TAB, again, I didn't really have any fears, but so I was really ready to go to get into diving and start diving. And so once I started diving and I started showing pictures and started having more experiences, my mom started to say, oh, you know what, I want to try. I think I could try this. Fortunately, the Tennessee Aquatic Project decided to have a class just for parents. And so I think I served as sort of an inspiration for my mom to start diving into the water. And I think that can apply to not only adults, but also children. I think just showing the cool pictures. We always see pictures, you can see a picture, but to see it for yourself is something I think that is interesting to get people inspired to try and want to see just the beauty that lies under the water. So one of the big things that TAP is doing is going out to different in our community. We would go to a community center, and that's where we had our meetings. And so kids that were at the community center could see what we were doing. We get in the pool that was at the community center and they could see what we were doing. So I think just exposure is really important to bring people to not only swim or not only scuba dive, but also overcome their fear of swimming. Tennessee Aquatic Project, I mean, you have to know it's important to know how to swim to scuba dive. So we would also have swimming classes for those that needed to brush up on their swimming or get better at swimming. And that was a big part of the program.
Okay. Thank you. So we're coming up on 45 minutes, and that's kind of what I had kind of planned in terms of time frame. And then I also, again, wanted to open up to questions. I don't see really any other questions in the chat on the three places. Is there anything anybody else would like to share?
Just to clear up, right, any misnomers that may exist, you don't have to know how to swim in order to dive. You have to know how to swim in order to become certified as a diver. Right? I encourage everyone to learn how to swim. It's a necessary skill, right? And it benefits you in the long run. Right? So I'm not saying that you should not learn how to swim. As we work very closely with the National Association of Black Scuba Divers. Ken?
What? It's not mine.
No, he's asking you to speak because of the sirens, I think.
Okay. Well, what I was going to say, and getting back to some earlier questions, what DWP does better, and what it is our outreach component. You can become what we call an instructor in the Dive with a Purpose program, and you have to go out and talk to the community about what we do. So, 90% of this country is landlocked. So, and people will say, well, this doesn't affect me, so on, so on, so on, right? But I think anybody needs to know that every creek and river in this country is connected to the ocean one way or another, right? So anything that you put in a creek, anything you put in a river will eventually land in the ocean. So so with the TAP kids, we've adopted a creek called White's Creek, and I always tell them, right, if you take a plastic bottle and put it in the creek and nothing happens to it, it will wind up in the ocean, right? Because the creek is connected to our White Creek is connected to the Cumberland River. Cumberland River goes to the Mississippi, and the Mississippi goes to the Gulf, and of course the Gulf will lead into the ocean. But every river and every creek in this country is connected to the ocean. So if you just pay attention to just the little things is straws. Plastic straws are killing our sea creatures. If you take a straw and you throw it in the creek, you don't think nothing of it. Again, it'll wind up in the ocean. So the little things that we can do, everybody can do in this country, right, will help mitigate the deterioration of the oceans. People, they'll change the oil in their cars and they'll throw the oil in the sewers, and eventually that oil will wind up in the ocean, right? So these are all the little things that we can do as a community, as a people, to mitigate all the little problems that Kramer alluded to earlier, right? So that's how everybody can help, right? Now the rest of us, we're involved and we're engaged in doing everything we can to mitigate the deterioration of the oceans. But it's everybody collectively pulling together and doing these small things, just a small thing. Just don't throw your oil. If you change your oil on your car, don't throw it on the ground. Don't throw the plastics. Clean up. If you have water bottles, all these just little things will help mitigate the eventual demise of the oceans. And again, DWP, we were reached out to do this particular outreach, right? So we've done hundreds of them. I keep track of them. If anybody wants to hear from us, and so we have actually a presentation. Kramer has a presentation. We all have presentations that we do. We talk about archaeology, coral reef, and it'll tell you the history of the program, and we'll have photographs and so on. So a little bit more formal than what we're doing here. So if anybody wants to hear from us and schedule a Zoom meeting or any kind of meeting, if you're close enough, we'll come in person, bring equipment, do whatever we need to do. Just kind of reach out to us. I don't know if you could put our number in the chat, which would be www.divewithapurpose.org.
Sure, I can.
And you can go on to that's our website. Go to our website, and there's a thing you can click on where you'll contact us, and you'll contact me and say, Mr. Stewart, we would like a presentation to our group, right? And then between Kramer and the rest of ours, we'll assign someone to you, right? And then they will do a presentation for you, like you did with us, Dr. Roche.
Yes. Okay.
So that's how it works. But we love doing outreach. That's the most important part of what we do. You can get young people like Rachel. We've got more young people other than Rachel, right? So if you want to hear from a younger audience, we can do that. So we have all kinds of things. And then, we talk about the programs.
Do you have a chapter of people here in South Florida?
What do you mean by chapter?
Well, if we wanted to do, say, a live program, later on in the year, maybe, early next year, or, winter time.
Kramer lives there, so we don't have.
Well, he's still a few hours away from us, right? What are you, 2 hours away from us, Kramer?
Where are you?
Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, hour and a half.
Okay.
But I teach in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, okay.
I dive in Fort Lauderdale.
Okay.
Teach and dive in West Palm Beach. So
okay.
I just
the DWP does not have chapters. Right. We have members.
Okay.
National Association of Black Scuba Divers has chapters.
I hear you.
I don't think they have a chapter in Kramer. I don't think they have a chapter in South Florida. I think Rick Powell used to have a chapter there.
Right. Yeah. He was invited to participate this evening, but I suppose he was not able to attend.
But we can do anything that you want us to do. You just give us the time. Give us a little time and we can make something happen.
Okay. And right. If you're doing anything also in our area, if you have planned events, you should definitely let us know because we can help get the word out as well. There Absolutely. Might be some people that want to come and even help clean up,
We'd love that.
I noticed lately. Yeah, I've noticed some like kayaking groups that are now meeting on a regular basis to clean waterways and kayaks and various things like that. So.
Yeah, I remember we were thinking about doing a ocean cleanup, right?
Right. Well, we used to do a lot of engagement pre-COVID, and we're trying to get back to doing
right. We all are
ocean and shoreline cleanups in and around all parts right. of the east coast of Florida. We was trying to get that done for next month's program, but we weren't able to coordinate the logistics for that. But yes, that's happening.
Gotcha. Okay.
How would a recreational diver like myself become involved with your organization?
You already are.
Okay.
I hear that.
Build on your skills, and we're going to tie you in. We're going to use your connection to Jamaica. Right.
Ah, nice.
Yeah. Denise, go to the website, and then you'll get a pop-up, and it'll say join our newsletter. If if you go to our website, www.divingwithapurpose.org, anybody, and we have a newsletter. And when you come to the when it pops up, you do your email address and your name, and it comes to me directly. And if you do that, I will get in contact with you via email, and then we can talk about the possibilities of what you want to do.
And
Okay.
Doctor, please share my email with the judge.
Okay, I sure will.
Okay.
I will do that. And let me just a couple of housekeeping things. I want to remind people that here at the African American Research Library, this is our bicentennial year. We're celebrating 20 years. And we have been having programs the entire year, although the actual anniversary date is in October. So we just did Juneteenth, Black American Music Month, and Pride. We celebrated with a juke joint theme a couple of weeks ago, and it was really great. So I do want to remind people, if you go online to Broward County Libraries.org, bcl.org, you can find our schedule of events. Because as I said, we have some things going on, at least about 3 more events that will take us through the end of the year. So I want to thank everyone again for joining. This was recorded, so it will be available on YouTube if you want to share the link with anybody or keep it for yourselves for your own records. And again, I want to thank my guests tonight, Judge Denise Lane, Ms. Rachel Stewart, Mr. Kramer Wimberly, and Mr. Kenneth B. Stewart. Thank you so much. And once again, this is Dr. Ramona La Roche from the African American Research Library and Cultural Center and Historic Sistrunk in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And we're celebrating Oceans of Possibilities with our summer learning program. And I'd like to close on a note to lift up to our ancestors and our Orishas in particular, Yemeya and Olokun, which are spirits of the ocean, as well as Mami Wata. Give thanks, everyone. Have a blessed evening and stay safe in your journey. And we'll all keep in touch and see each other soon. Good night. Good night.